Hey guys, welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys joining me for a quick little video this afternoon. And guys, today we're going to be talking about trolling motor speed, and I want to specifically talk about the speed that you need to run your trolling motor at to catch the most bass, because this is without a doubt to me one of the most overlooked aspects of what it takes to catch fish. A lot of people don't put enough emphasis in it, they don't understand it. So I got some good tips and advice to pass along to you guys in today's episode here. Also, guys, before we get started real quick, just want to give you guys a heads up that Tackle Warehouse has got a big spring fishing sale starting up right now. They got 25% off on a bunch of stuff on their website there. If you're interested in getting stocked up for the spring, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. And if you guys like intuitive angling and you want to give something back to the channel while you buy your fishing tackle, if you just use and bookmark my link in every video description, that's a really good way to support the channel. So appreciate that, and thank you very much for everybody that's not only subscribed to Intuitive Angling, but joined as channel members and Patreon members. Appreciate that. Okay, this is one of the things when you're talking about things that will really help you as far as, you know, having a noticeable success of consistency in your bass fishing. There's about a half a dozen things that are really responsible for that. And it's not the best lure or the best color or the newest lure or anything like that. It's the foundational baseline elements of bass fishing. And one of those elements is boat control, boat positioning. Now, specifically, I don't really want to get into boat positioning per se in this video. I want to talk more about the speed that you need to run your trolling motor at in order to catch the most fish. Okay, first of all, when you're thinking about this, trolling motor speed, don't think in terms of fishing fast or fishing slow or turning the trolling motor up or down. Number one thing that you got to figure out is you have to figure out the pace that the fish need to be, you know, that you have the pace that you have to fish at. And the pace that you fish at, it has to do with a lot of different variables. It has to do with the water temperature, the water clarity, the type of cover you're fishing, the time of year, the mood and the personality of the bass. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to determine the best speed to set your trolling motor at that will allow you to efficiently fish whatever water you're doing and efficiently fish the lure, yet at the same time, you know, cover some water, if that's what it takes. There's a lot of different ins and outs with this. Sometimes you don't want to cover water. Sometimes it's just cast into one spot. Like if you're fishing the end of a drop-off or something, or isolated brush pile. And other times, let's say, for example, you're out on a big open water flat where the fish are just roaming everywhere. A situation like that, you've got to pick up the pace and you got to fish faster to cover water, because it's one here and one there. You're not after a group of fish. Okay, so here's how you determine the speed that you need to go at. First of all, before you determine that, you have to take in consideration wind and current, because wind and current is going to affect your boat speed. And that is a calculus that you have to make, whether you're fishing into the current or with into the wind or with the wind, number one. The second thing you have to do is you have to break down the type of cover that you're fishing in relationship to the water temperature, and that will give you a good indication of how fast you need to fish. Now let's talk about two ends of the extremes here. If let's say, for example, I'm flipping heavy grass mats, or I'm flipping matted hyacinths in the water, or maybe the water's up real high and there's flooded bushes everywhere, and I'm pitching and flipping thick cover that's like a big giant row of thick cover or grass. In a situation like that, that's one end of the spectrum where you will have to dial that trolling motor back super slow, like put it on number 2 and you barely move, because if you're trying to pick apart really thick cover, you can't efficiently fish that very fast with the flipping and pitching technique. That would be on the low end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, as far as when you have to fish fast, let's say, for example, you're fishing a big open water flat up on Lake St. Clair or Lake Champlain for smallmouth or something, and it's a big giant flat with just isolated grass and rocks everywhere out there. The bass are scattered everywhere out there, and maybe you're throwing a spinnerbait or, you know, a spook or something like that. In a situation like that, you have got to dial that trolling motor up faster to cover water on that flat, because you're making lots of casts and you're casting every direction. The water's really clear, So you need to cover more water. In general, like I said, the cleaner the water, the faster that you can go, as long as the water's not really cold. Now, everything else will be incremental between that. I just gave you the fastest you need to fish, open water flats, a little bit warm water, smallmouth, and the slowest you need to fish, flipping and pitching, thick matted cover. Everything else is a determination in between there. You know, if you're cranking a rocky bank with a wiggle wart, or you're cranking a riprap bank, yeah, you might be able to put your trolling motor on 4 or 5. You know, if you're pitching and flipping dock pilings where you're targeting, maybe hitting just the outside pilings with a jig, maybe 3 or 4 would be a good setting on your trolling motor. You know, if you're going down a bluff bank with a spinnerbait, burning a spinnerbait, maybe 5 or 6 is going to be a good, a speed to fish it at. But what you have to do is, every lure category is different in terms of the speed that you need. Some baits, like a reaction bait, like a chatterbait, a spinnerbait, and a crankbait, a lot of times, you're going to have to match your speed of retrieve to your boat speed. And, if you're fishing a bait like a jig or, shaky head or a Ned rig, something like that, you're going to have to dial it back. But here's what you have to do and what you have to figure out. You want to be, number one, efficient. And that efficiency is a balance between working your lure perfect and covering water. So if you're fishing a jerkbait or a crankbait or whatever the lure, you want to make sure that you fish it slow enough or fast enough to have the best action. If you don't want to like go down a bank with a crankbait so fast that you're having to crank 100 miles an hour to keep up with it. The same with a jig. You don't want to be going so fast where you hop a jig 2 or 3 feet and then your boat's passing your line. So every single technique is different in terms of the type of lure, the lure category, the weight of that lure, the depth of water you're fishing, the current, and everything. But there's 2 things to remember, guys. You got to be efficient. You got to, be able to work your baits right, and you got to be able to cover some water in order to put you around, the most active fish. And it's a balancing game with that. And there's not one right or wrong answer. Every situation is unique to itself. But just remember that when you're getting ready to figure out the right pace. So see y'all later.